So just a very short introduction to myself. My name is Aoife Dunn. I'm the Head of Training Development here in Growth University. Online with us myself this evening is my colleague, Aoife Murphy. She's the Head of Community and Operations. Jen Bryan, our co-founder and CMO, and our content creator genius, Jake Ellis. And our founder and CEO, Craig Zingane, will be joining us as well very shortly. So thank you very much to everyone. You're very welcome tonight. This is our very first webinar and program on the area of branding. And I suppose I'll just give you a kind of a short introduction to Kim. So both myself and Jen have worked with Kim in our previous lives. So Kim is joining us today, and I suppose probably the question is, what kind of qualifies her to be here, to taking an hour of your precious time at your lunchtime, obviously, if you're in EST time. So Kim is a seasoned qualitative researcher. She's a brand planner, customer experience creator, strategist, lecturer, SME trainer, and she's also a business owner. She works with some of the biggest global advertising and consumer research agencies, from Core Media and McCann Group, where she headed up their strategic brand planning team, to Millward Brown Global, where she led global brand innovation projects in Europe, as well as for specialist branding and innovation agency Jump. So following all that, she also ran her own consultancy business, and she now manages EMEA and APJ customer marketing for the Austin global tech company SolarWinds. So really, I suppose what Kim's kind of focus and what her priority and I suppose her MVP is partnering with clients and creative agencies to understand people, building brands that mean something, and giving you a confident voice to which to talk about your story and make decisions about your brand easier. So you'll see some pictures here of Kim that she's showing on the slide. And on her next slide here, you'll see some of the national and global brands that Kim has worked with during her career. I suppose some kind of more relevant for this audience, you see Microsoft, Mondelez, Diageo, Glanbia, Optimum Nutrition, PMI Tobacco, and CAE Global. So as you can see, there's a whole host of very, I suppose, reputable brands there. Kim is an absolute, I suppose, very well renowned in the area of brand. So I will now hand you over to Kim, and she'll look after you for the rest of the webinar. Thank you very much. And please, if anyone has any questions at any time, pop them into the chat box, and we'll make sure that Kim will answer them at the end. Thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction, Aoife. And it was great work, really good project, the last one we did together, really rewarding for everyone, I think so. And as Aoife said, guys, you know, I'm trying to allow for time at the end for Q&A, because it is such a dynamic space. There could be a million questions at the end of it. So I just want to allow time for you to ask those questions. So Aoife's going to collect them up for me, and I won't be looking at them as we go through the presentation, but we can catch up at the end. So look, today is really about building your brand, and it's about building it the right way. And what I say to clients is that if you build it the right way, it will actually liberate and inspire you to make better decisions that help you to grow your business. So whether you're a small established business or whether you're thinking about starting a business, it's really hard to find your voice and to find your narrative and your language. And that's really what building a brand is all about. And then once you put it out there, it's about how does that brand gear you for success. So the first most important point that I really can't stress enough is that your brand is not your logo. There's been many creative agencies saying this, writing articles about this, but I think in a digital era, it's just everyone wants to be in activation mode. Everyone wants to go straight to activation, you know, and so they go and they create a logo on Canva, or they get a graphic designer. Usually it's my friend who's a designer, and you know, they create something and it looks beautiful. There's nothing wrong graphically with it. The trouble is that what's the substance of that? What's the thinking behind it? That's what a brand is, okay? So this is, I'm sure anyone who's a marketing aficionado will know who Marty Neumeier is. So look, I love this visual because I think it describes perfectly what's going on here. So most smaller, medium businesses that I meet are very much in space one, which is marketing. And they're saying to people, I'm a great lover, you know, and a lot of people haven't even moved into structured advertising space, which I know is one thing that the Launch Growth University helps with, is actually helping you to do that right. But that's where you start saying it all the time. I'm a great lover, I'm a great lover, I'm a great lover. And you keep saying it over and over again. Public relations then is what, you know, you say, trust me, he's a great lover. So you employ someone else to say, you know, these guys are really good at what they do. Branding is understanding what that person wants. It's empathy. It's making them feel good about themselves and saying, I understand you're a great lover. So let's be honest, guys. Most businesses, small businesses certainly, stay up in the top left box here. They might not even get to an effective advertising stage. And what I want to do today, we have 30 minutes without the Q&A. So look, we're not going to, completely build your brand today, but what I want to get you guys doing is really thinking about how can I move more in the direction of the branding space. So that's what this is all about. So we're just going to look at 3 things: why crafting brand is important, where you might like to start, and how you can start to write that brand story. So what I want to do today is give you really practical advice. I don't want to give you a load of overwhelming theory. I want you to leave with something that you can actually do something with. So if you have 2 screens and the ability to write, while we're working through this, or if you have a pen and paper, I'd strongly advise that you just keep those to hands for the how to write your story part of this, okay? So why is crafting a brand important? Okay, so as I said, a brand is not a logo, and a logo does not mean that you have a brand, okay? So here's the picture of Fonzie, which I think could be fair to say probably most generations people will recognize, no matter whether you're kind of older or younger, somewhere in the middle. But there's a very, very famous phrase that was coined from Happy Days, and it was called jumping the shark. And basically what happened was Happy Days ratings were plummeting, and they had an episode basically where Fonzie jumped a shark, okay, on his water skis. And it was kind of a last minute attempt to draw in ratings and interest in the show. And it didn't work, right? Because it was a stunt. It was a moment in time. It wasn't about understanding where the show could go, what the expanding narrative was, how to move along the journey with the people who've been watching. It was a stunt, right? And that's never ever going to work. So, what has actually happened is, if you've watched Mad Men as well, that's really the space that I'm coming from, which is, what is the story of the brand? How are we looking at our audience and finding an emotional connection with them that can create a long-term bond with that person, okay? And what has actually happened is, at Growth University, you guys are focused on the bottom line, on revenue, on digital marketing skills. Revenue marketing is what I would call it. But the unfortunate situation with that is, a lot of the time it can be focused on more shorter term goals. So that's why I'm here today, is to really kind of pull you out of that short term mindset. And by short term, I can still mean a year, guys, because the brand is much longer than a year. So you're thinking, geez, I'm creating my whole content calendar for the year. And I'm like, look, your brand has to live a lot longer than that if you want to live off the revenue from your brand, okay? So you are probably more used to focusing on analytics, shorter term revenue goals, campaign creation, campaign measurement, management and adjustment. But actually, I think that in this day and age, we're really overly focused on digital to drive revenue and to drive potential. And we really need to shift that direct response mindset into a longer term, more sustainable growth area. So I was just trying to, I'm looking down here because I was just trying to pull some more recent research on this. And Ender's analysis basically found that 70% of all growth in the UK advertising over the past 15 years has been really about direct response campaigns. And I'm going to hazard a guess that those stats are very similar in Ireland, very similar in the US, and very similar in countries that we have other guests here from today. And what's happening really is that there are so many fragmented media channels at the moment. It's really, really, really hard to put your attention on all of those different things, to pull a consistent story together, and to know what you're putting out where. Now, there's obviously a huge amount of potential with those media channels, but I believe that potential is hugely dependent on actually just having a brand where you know what narrative you're actually talking about really consistently across all of those channels. And look, there's loads of research that's out there, but campaigns that deliver a strong emotional connection are the ones that actually add dollar value to the bottom line. And there's absolutely no question of that. And to that end, I just want to show you one graph that came from an absolutely incredible guy called Les Binet. He's the head of basically performance and monitoring Adam and Eve, DDB, who are the guys who create the John Lewis ads, which you may not be familiar with in the States, but it's like the ultimate Christmas ad, and everybody waits for them to come out over here. And this guy basically looked at an insanely comprehensive research study. It was 30 years, 700 brands, and 83 categories that show that for long-term success, you absolutely need to focus on brand building. So what they showed basically was that you need both a really strong brand story and you need your campaign planning. So you need both of those things in order to actually drive revenue up over time, as opposed to just keep your business tipping along. So that is why brands are important. So with that in mind, where do we start, guys? What am I going to talk about here today that can help you to get moving on this if you're not already? So this is again one of my favorite quotes from Mark Twain, which is, "I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one instead." Okay, so the brands that we love take a lot of time to distill their story. And if you think about any brand at all that you love, what do? They don't come up with a dynamic tagline for every month or every occasion or every Christmas. They say the same thing over and over and over again. And yes, that might evolve with culture and with your audience, but they say the same thing over and over, and they spend a huge amount of time and money developing that language and developing that connection with their audience. So why am I showing you birthday cake? Because I think cake, actually the way the cake business has gone, I think is very similar to the way the brand business has gone, right? So usually if I think back to Holy Communions, as we have a bit Ireland, or birthday parties, cakes used to be pretty ugly. They used to be pretty mediocre looking things. You know, you go down to your local bakery, but when you sliced into that cake, that sponge was soft and fresh, and so was that cream, okay? Whereas now you go to a birthday party and you see something that looks like a child's cartoon on Netflix. It's so beautiful, but you cut into it and it could taste like absolute crap, right? So that's really what I'm talking about here. Is what's happened is there's loads of activity, there's loads of campaigns, there's loads of creative. Everyone is a Canva expert. Everyone is creating these slick looking brands. But when you cut into that cake, do you really know what the ingredients are in there? Does that really taste as good as it could? Is that going to be the type of thing people will come back for a second slice after they've taken a picture for their Instagram? Okay, so what I call it is just cake decorating. And there's a whole lot of stuff looking pretty but not tasting very good. So to that end, there are actually 3 ingredients to a really delicious cake in terms of your brand building, okay? And we're going to actually focus on the decoration for today, as in what are the templates that you can use to put all these ingredients into. But I just want to very briefly talk about the 2 elements of building a brand that I sell to my clients. So I talk about 2 things. I talk about finding your story, which most people do not take sufficient time to do, and telling it well. Okay, so telling it well is pulling it all together, activating it and pushing it out there, which is where most small businesses focus their energy, certainly now, is just doing as opposed to thinking. But the value, the freedom, the saving time, saving money, it all is done in the find your story section. So I'm sure you've all heard, all the work is done before a workshop, right? All the work is always done before a workshop, because if the structure is right, everything flows and you get what you need out of it. So what do you have to do to find your story, guys? So these are the 3 things also that I speak to SMEs about all the time, and they haven't done it. And I'm pretty cutthroat with them about it, as anyone who's worked with me will know. And I say, well, that's just not good enough, you know, and it's just not good enough to say you don't know what your competitors in positioning is or what needs they're meeting. It's not good enough to know to not know where your market is going. It's not good enough not to be keeping your eye on the trends and where your business is going to be in 10 years as opposed to where it is now. If you want to rely on your business for revenue, for living, for paying your mortgage, your rent, whatever. So the first thing is knowing what we know. And the funny thing is that's what we call secondary research, right? There is a ton of information out there. So ask yourself, have I made the best use of information that is already there? And that could be trends documents, it could be central statistics office data, it could be research that has been made public about your industry, about your topic, about your product or service area. The second thing you need to gather is your insights. So what do we actually know about the people that we are selling to? So you don't need to know what people are doing. You need to just gather, okay, so these are the things that people are doing. More people are buying leggings. More people are employing private financial services advisors. Okay, so that's what people are doing. There is no competitive advantage in knowing what people are doing, right? So one thing that really bothers me is how Facebook call their analytics Facebook insights, because it isn't insights, it's data, it's facts. It's not actually giving you an insight into the motivation behind why people are behaving like that on your Facebook page, okay? So the word insight used kind of in a dirty way, insight is knowing why people are doing what they're doing. And a really good example of that is, as I'm sure you've heard before, people don't buy the drill, they buy the hole in the wall. And I would go as so far as to say they don't even buy the hole in the wall, they buy the feeling of being a really strong, amazing husband who got the job done, right? Or a really strong, amazing wife who got the job done. Because I'm getting pretty intimate with our drill in our house at the moment with all the DIY that's going on, okay? So that's what I want you to think about, is not the fact that people are buying drills. You're not selling the amount of attachments that go with the drill, or the, how your drill is quieter than other drills. You're selling your kids being able to sleep while you get work done, right? So I want you to really think about who you're selling to, and I want you to think about the emotional bond there. And I don't care whether you are a B2B business selling a tool for carpenters to use on site on a business, or whether you're selling accountancy services. Everybody is human. Everybody closes their laptop and goes back to their husband, their wife, their partner, their dog, their cat, their brother, their sister. Everybody is fundamentally human. And the beautiful thing about looking at needs as opposed to functional or technical benefits that you're selling is that there is a finite amount of needs. So you just need to figure out which one it is you are meeting through your product. Okay. And the other thing that's really important to note about your market is you need to actually reduce the amount of people that you're speaking to, okay? So what we try to do is say, and I even really, really intelligent business owners who I've met, I say, well, who's your target market? And they're like, sure, we're kind of for everyone, we do a bit of this, bit of that, and that scares the life out of me, because what you're actually trying to do, even if you're Guinness or Jack Daniels or Coca-Cola, you're actually trying to find the smallest viable audience that you can actually target so that you can really focus your campaigns. And Guinness, for example, you could be certainly in the belief that they actually sell to everyone. They sell to older men, middle-aged men, younger men. But on the contrary, their bullseye target is a 25-year-old male who is at the bridge between being a boy and being a man, right? So they actually target them with this notion of being more discerning, being more kind of intimate about how they drink their drink, taking their time, growing up. And that's where they focus their advertising dollars, okay? So that's what I want everybody to do, is you should absolutely, it doesn't matter what your business is, you should have no more than 3 personas that you are selling into. And if you have 6, I'm just going to tell you, it's never going to work, because your message is just not going to be refined enough. And to be honest, if you can pick one and build your message for them and just make sure it doesn't alienate the other 2, that's even better. So all of these things that I've talked about so far, knowing what we know, insights, what you want to have here, guys, is a room full of post-it notes of all this really interesting stuff that you're learning as you go along, because that's going to go into the template that I show you in a minute, okay? So you could be writing down things even now while I'm speaking to you about these things, just random little bits of buzz information on little post-it notes, and then you can be putting them up. And then I'm going to show you then where you can start pulling those post-it notes into a template that will help you really, really start to refine your brand message. And last, but not least, guys, is, as we all know, we don't live in a vacuum. And when you are running your own shop and you're really busy, it's very, very easy to get really stuck on just, I have to get through today. I have to get this campaign set up. But what I would encourage everyone to do is to take even a half a day a week for 5 or 6 weeks to do this exercise and to start building up your buzz information, your whole like beautiful mind Russell Crowe style collection of yellow post-it notes of just interesting stuff that you start learning about your business when you start thinking about these things. And one of those is, where is my consumer right now? So if you're selling to a millennial female, and that's far too general, but just to keep it simple, what is happening with millennials right now? Millennial, by the way, in case you're not familiar, is just a term for a particular age group of people or a band within which people were born. I would be millennial, for example. So what's actually happening with that generation? How are they different to the previous generation? How are they different to the generation that comes after them? And how are their habits changing? What are their needs? What does work life look like for them? And start asking yourself questions about that. But also start asking yourself questions about where your business is going, okay? So there's a real crowded market at the moment for things like coaching, for example. I'm just picking that out of the blue. And I look at all the Instagram accounts of people who've done courses that I've run before, and to research before I deliver the webinar, like I did today as well. And they all have the same language. They're all saying exactly the same thing. And it's so vanilla. And it's so boring. And I can guarantee you, if you start looking at some of your competitors' profiles or websites, you're probably a little bit guilty of the same thing, okay? So if you want to stand out, you need to be talking differently about what you do. Have a different framework, have a different turn of phrase, have different adjectives that you use to describe what you're doing. Because if you're doing the same as everyone else, nobody is going to grab onto you, certainly if you're not already a market leader. That's just a fact, okay? And then the future. So really simple example again, locally there's a coffee company who opened and their logo has a mustache in it. And that was over. That whole movement of mustaches, hipster cafe stuff, it was over. Like, I was sitting there thinking, there is no lifespan whatsoever in this brand visual, you know. So you need to know what's going to happen tomorrow to be able to develop something that's going to actually give you any mileage with your brand. So how are you going to take all this information that you're going to build and put it into a template that can really start help you thinking about, how am I going to talk about my brand? What's my narrative? What's the story that I'm going to tell? Because even though you may be an established business, back when, you know, we could go and network and stuff like that, you meet somebody and they say, so what do you do? And it's actually really hard to drum up the couple of sentences that talk about the benefit that you sell, without having to really stop and pause, or talking for 5 minutes and realize that you've actually kind of not represented yourself very well. So this stuff helps with that as well. So how do you write your story? So a brand is made up of 3 things, okay? It's made up of our product or service, what we say about it, and how people experience it. And since I had this phrase put together in, say, 6 years ago, this sentence, what I would say now is that word experience should be bold and underlined, because really now I would say a brand is an experience. It's an experience that people have with you when they're engaging with you. And a good pal of mine says, you know, when people are scrolling through their feeds or on Google, you know, they're not looking for your ad. You're interrupting their browsing experience. So if you're going to do that, you better make sure that it's with something that they think, oh, that's really interesting and that's really relevant to my life right now. I think clicking on this is going to make me find something that helps me feel better about myself and helps me feel like a superstar. So if you already have a business, this exercise can be a tale of 2 stories. So you can create 2 maps, and I would encourage you to do that. And again, I know Aoife, when we did some work together, we did a now, which can be really hard to do because there has to be all the stuff you want to change in there. And you can do the tomorrow map. So once you've done where your brand is now and you've really challenged yourself to be ruthless about what's not working as well as what's working, then you can start to create the same template for what you want to actually look at tomorrow. And what that allows you to do is add in or remove any associations you want. And also, if there's something that you don't actually think people are understanding about your business, it gives you an opportunity to tell them about that. So again, a really simple example is a woman I was working with was very much kind of positioned online as an acupuncturist, and that's kind of the way she was viewed in the market, when in fact she actually had a medical qualification as well and a PhD, and people were kind of boxing her in with holistic therapy, acupuncture, when actually she wanted to really have a more hybrid message. So she was able to evolve her brand to include a more interesting story about who she is and why she can help people. And actually she's gone even further into that niche now, into fertility, which is what you want to do. So a niche within a niche within a niche within a niche. And I saw one of our guests is actually a digital marketer who specializes in digital marketing for the aesthetics business, so things like Botox. And I thought, that is brilliant. That is brilliant, because that's a niche within a niche, and there are a ton of businesses who need help with that, and she is going to be an extra expert at that, because that's what she does. So I absolutely love that. That's how that's kind of what I'm talking about getting to. So guys, this is a very simple Venn diagram. This is where we're going to start. So your brand is made up of three things, and here are the three things. So our product or our service, what do you do? What are you unique in doing? What are famous things, what do you want to be famous for? So that could include anything from a color, blue, to an app that you use, to an acronym that describes a program that you deliver, or a product that you deliver, or a problem that you solve, or it could be your name if you want your name to be on the top of people's tongues. So it could be anything at all. How we talk about it are personality traits. That's all that goes in here. So if you were describing brands that you love, we would use personality traits to describe them. So it could be happy, energetic, dynamic, innovative. Actually, don't use the word innovative. It's my least favorite word in the whole world. But they're personality traits that go in here. How do you actually want people to talk about your brand? What energy do you want your brand to give off? And my favorite is how people experience it, right? So what effect do you want to have on people? How will people look and feel being close to your brand? So there's two very important distinctions in this circle, and this is really important to take home. So there is one. How will people look being associated with your brand? So look is a little bit superficial. So why would they tag your brand on Instagram? Why would they tell their friend over a coffee that you're amazing? So what way are you going to make them look? So a simple example would be, I bought a pair of Vejas or Vejas, which are, you know, those kind of like sustainable sourced leather shoes. So I might look like a cool mom, but I might also look environmentally conscious, you know, so I'm saying something about myself when I wear those shoes in public. Or if I tag a food or a drink brand, what does that say about me? Or I tag my personal trainer, you know, what does that say about me? Why do I want to be associated with her? So she might make me, you know, look like I've got my shit together or something like that. Feel, on the other hand, is the other set of things you want to have in here. So you might have 4 or 5, make you look, whatever it is. And then you might have make you feel. And the difference between looking and feeling is just for you. Feeling is inside. Feeling is what brings people really close to your brand. Okay, I'm going to give you some examples in a minute, but they might make you feel confident. They might make you feel empowered or feel capable. So these are really, really important words. So when you've done all of that, I'm going to show you some examples of my own map in a minute. What you do is you ask, well, what 2 words really sum up everything in this map? And that's what's called a brand essence, or your brand DNA. So these are really important words, and they take a long time to get to. So again, I could be post-it noting for 2 weeks with clients to try to get to these 2 words, right? But they are really, really important. And basically they're made up of 2 words. When you start looking at your brand wheel, what is the one word that really describes why you exist? And then manner is basically what's the energy with which I do that. So it's always better to show you what this is. So your purpose is kind of, you look to these two circles for it. You look at your products and services, and you look at how people look or feel being associated with, and you ask, well, what is the one word that really brings my purpose together here? And then your manner, or the adjective word, as I would call it, which sits on the top, comes from your personality section. Surprise, surprise. So you can pick a word from here, or you can pick a new word that kind of is a summary of them and put it over your purpose. Okay. So again, let's just actually have a look at this. So my DNA as a business is, I say, my purpose is liberation. That is my purpose. Every time I work with clients, my goal is to make things easier for them. They feel free. They feel like they have a weight lifted off their shoulders. Okay. And I do that in a lucrative way, because if they ain't making money from all this liberation, there is no point. Okay. Which brings me back to the original thing. Brands make money. Brands are revenue value over time. If you want to actually really live a really strong, successful, commercially successful business, you got to build a brand. Okay. So if you can see there, I've built that liberation from looking at, okay, I want to make easy decision making, break down masses of information, inspire my team, ignite a new sense of purpose, engaging processes, be a trusted partner, right? Look smart, look organized, look like a superstar, feel excited, feel focused, feel ready. That's all about liberation, right? So that's where I've actually generated that word. And then on the top, well, how do I go about that? Pragmatic, commercial, inspiring, trustworthy, supportive, and brave, and lucrative, straight talking. That's the word that I landed on for that. So you can start building this wheel right now. You can go straight into the wheel, or you can do what I would advise you do and do all of the ingredients collection first, and then come back to the wheel. And what the goal is, guys, then, is once you've got all of this together, this is a beautiful narrative that I can use in any of my presentations, or on Instagram, or indeed here today, to talk about what I do. And what I've done here is I've got a thesaurus out. I've gotten some interesting words into my brand wheel. If I see the word innovative, I'm like, Jesus, got to find a better word than that, right? So you can actually find your own language through this process. Okay. So that's what I've done. And if you read through this, you can see language that feels unique, that maybe another strategic brand partner doesn't use. And it's because I've gone through the journey of finding my own story instead of just robbing somebody else's. Or I don't think it's even robbing someone else's. We just get mished into our own industry and we start using the same jargon that everyone else uses, right? And then what happens is we just start sounding like everybody else, don't we? So that's what we want to do, is differentiate ourselves through our brand. Another one I absolutely love is for a health insurance brand. I worked on their corporate program, and their purpose ended up being vitality, and they fueled vitality. And again, we came up with this beautiful narrative around that they can then use in corporate presentations to big companies they now work with, like Lidl, like Vodafone, which is one of our biggest telecoms providers here in Ireland. So this sells and this connects people to your purpose. What do you do? Why do you do it? And why is it going to make me feel like a superstar? They are questions that need to be answered really magnetically through the brand that you create. So this, you can see, is some of the advertising that came out of a lot of that research, fueling vitality, right? So all of your creative, your brand, any campaigns you run, you can go back to your DNA and say, does this feel like fueling vitality? Because if it doesn't, guess what? It's really easy for me to say, do you know what? That's just not going to work for me. That just doesn't fit with my brand. Or somebody asks you to come on a podcast and they don't feel like they're fueling vitality. You don't feel like that's their message. Guess what? You don't spend a Wednesday evening preparing for a Thursday evening webinar that doesn't fit with your brand goals, with your audience, or with your purpose. Things become really, really easy when you do things this way. And just so you actually know, if I was to say to you, DNA of an energy drink, which is limitless exhilaration, what energy drink is that? Aoife, you can't answer this question. Anyone? We're all very shy here, right? It's Red Bull. Okay, so anytime they're doing any advertising, if it doesn't look and feel like exhilaration that's delivered in a limitless way, guess what? They don't partner with them. They don't invest in it. They don't spend time on it. They don't put revenue against it. Okay, and then we have a furniture brand, which their DNA is enlivening togetherness. So their purpose is togetherness. They do togetherness in an enlivening way. Who is it? IKEA or IKEA, however you like to pronounce it. And you look at ads and the creative like playing with my friends, and it just feels like enlivening togetherness. So doing this exercise just makes it really easy to say, I'm in, I'm out. And when you have your brand wheel done, guess what? You can give it to a graphic designer, you can give it to a digital marketing support that you're working with, and they will love you for it because it will save their time fondling around in the dark, trying to figure out what it is you want. And it will save you dollar value, because how many times have we said, oh yeah, it'll take me half a day to put that logo together for you, and you hate it because they've totally missed what you're all about. You don't know how to tell them how to change it. You don't know how to tell them to evolve it. But if you give this to them at the beginning, they are going to find it much easier to give you what you want. And the ultimate goal here, guys, is when you have 7,000 post-its in each one of those circles, the goal is to say, how can I make it 8 things in each one of those parts of the circle? And when you've got it down to 8 things, that is the short letter that Mark Twain is talking about. You are going to feel buzzed when you have 8 totally unique words, phrases, or bits of information in each of those 3 circles. All of a sudden, you're going to have a fluidity in talking about and marketing your brand that you have never, ever had before. And you don't need to change your business to do it. You just need to work through this exercise. So with that in mind, just finally, what does this do? It creates an impression because people see it, it feels different, it looks different, and it makes sense to them. You're building recognition. So they're thinking, this is really, really, really something that I can recognize. When I see it all the time, I recognize the brand. The message is similar. The benefit they're selling is kind of always the same. So I'm like, okay, I know who these people are. It's like the same, it has the same kind of psychological mechanism as putting a frame or a logo on your stories. Because as we're shifting through our stories, you don't want to be just another person. You want them to be able to stop, acknowledge that they're in a health and wellness space, or they're in a financial support space, or they're in whatever it is, a business to business tools and technical support space. You want them to be able to recognize that. It shows people that you've got your SH1T together, guys. Like, really, honestly, you can charge. A guy came here the other day to look at cabinets in my house, which you can tell I'm in kind of my office, which is currently being built. And he was putting in cabinets, and he arrived up, and his van's lovely. He had lovely branding on his van, right? And he gave me a quote that was €500 more expensive than 2 other quotes I've got, but I kind of feel like spending on him because he looks like he's got his HH1T together. If he can have a van that's that clean, and if he can be that professional and that consistent, and that all actually aligned with the customer support I was getting from the administrative staff there, I'm probably going to spend the extra 500 quid because he has his stuff together. It has a customer as well as a commercial focus. So a lot of time, if you're in your own business, you've been motivated to run your own business because it aligns with what you want in life, what kind of work and flow you want to have. Like for me, consulting was, when I have kids, I'll want a little bit more flexibility. Okay, you've done that all now. So stop thinking about yourself and start thinking about what needs you're meeting for the customer. And you need to start talking about their needs, their feelings, their life. You will have a renewed sense of energy and common purpose. There is absolutely no doubt about it. You'll have a new sense of confidence and new language acquisition, which is really important for me from the copywriting end, that you can apply everywhere, from your web copy to PR to doing webinars, podcasts, things like that. And it really, 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 I say it really sweats for you once you've done that one exercise. So guys, I know there's a lot in there, but I really just wanted to focus on giving you tools to take action today, as opposed to overwhelming you with the theory of it all. There's loads of different elements to this, but I hope that what I've spoken through just in this brief period of time has been really helpful to you.